2008, Chicago native Jennifer Hudson's career was on the rise. At that time, her single Spotlight had claimed the top spot on the Billboard's Hot R&B and hip-hop charts, and her self-titled debut album was flying off the shelves. She had also made a big splash in Hollywood, starring in the blockbuster Sex and the City movie, and having a leading role in the hit film The Secret Life of Bees. In an interview with Vogue, she shared that her mother, Darnell Donerson, had been the one to encourage her to audition for American Idol in 2004, a decision that ultimately launched her music career. Jennifer and her siblings were raised by their mother, and Jennifer was incredibly close to her family, which included her older siblings, Jason and Julia Hudson. In 2006, when Jennifer found out that her sister Julia was planning on marrying William Balfour, she was shocked and disappointed. Jennifer knew William as she had gone to elementary school with him, and she personally disliked him. Jennifer said, quote, "None of us wanted her to marry him. We did not like how he treated her." Additionally, William was on parole after having spent nearly 7 years in prison for attempted murder, vehicular hijacking, and possession of a stolen vehicle. William was a career criminal and a drug dealer who joined a gang at only 15 years old, and he was involved in selling crack cocaine. He had a long rap sheet stemming from many incidents, involving one in November 1998, when he stole an SUV belonging to a man named Charles Gardner. In an attempt to stop him from stealing the car, Charles jumped onto the vehicle's luggage rack, which led to a high-speed police chase. The chase traveled through several South Side neighborhoods and along the Dan Ryan Expressway, reaching speeds close to 100 miles per hour, with William attempting to shake Charles off the roof of the car. Julia Hudson had a young son named Julian King from a previous relationship with a man named Gregory King. Julian was affectionately nicknamed Juice Box. By 2008, 27-year-old William Balfour had been married to 31-year-old Julia Hudson for a couple of years. Julia and William lived at Julia's mother's house on the south side of Chicago, on 70th Street and Yale Avenue. During that same year, the couple separated, and Julia kicked William out of the family home. William was known to be a very jealous man, to the point that he would become angry when young Julian would kiss his mother. He would tell Julian, quote, "Get off my wife." Throughout their separation, William had made at least 24 threats against Julia and her family. These threats reportedly began after he had moved out of the family house. He had openly said he would first kill her family, and then her if she didn't get back together with him. His words were, quote, "If you ever leave me, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to kill your family first. You will be the last to die." He had also told others that he was going to hurt Julia's brother Jason, who was also involved in dealing cocaine, and whom William mocked for his weight, which was close to 500 pounds. In the summer of 2008, William had stolen Jason's Sig Sauer semi-automatic weapon and was seen with it consistently. Julia worked with a woman named Jeannie Myers, who was married to Robin Myers. Robin met William at a party the Myers family hosted for their son's birthday around August 2008. During the party, Robin noticed that William had the gun tucked into his waistband. In a brief conversation, William opened up to Robin about his issues with Julia and her family. William complimented Robin's wife, saying that she was nicer and more caring than his wife Julia, who he thought was cheating on him with someone from work. He told Robin that if his suspicions were confirmed, he would f*** her and him up. He then complained about Julia's mother Darnell, brother Jason, and sister Jennifer, calling his mother-in-law a fat bitch who didn't want him around, and mocking his brother-in-law, calling him a fat ass, who was accusing him of stealing. Throughout this conversation, William made at least 10 different threats against various members of Julia's family, despite knowing Robin for less than 10 minutes. By October 2008, Julia had been separated from William for about 8 months, though they still had frequent contact and would sometimes be intimate. At that time, Julia and her son still lived at the Hudson family home with Julia's mother, Darnell, who was 57, and her brother Jason, who was 29. Julia's sister, Jennifer, had already moved out years earlier to focus on her career. On the morning of October 24th, 2008, William was planning on stopping by the Hudson family home to see his wife. However, before dropping by, William, who had reportedly been up all night, asked a friend to help him fix his car's broken power steering. The friend couldn't help at that moment but took the opportunity to buy a dime bag of crack cocaine from William. Afterward, he changed from a hoodie into a jacket and headed to the Hudson family home, and when he got there, he peered into Julia's bedroom window while she was getting dressed for work. Julia led him inside the house to talk while she continued getting ready, noting that he smelled of alcohol. The couple had been arguing about Julia seeing someone else during their separation, something that clearly upset William, even though he himself had been intimately involved with several other women, including a woman named Shanta. William had seen a set of birthday balloons that Jennifer had sent to her sister Julia, and William had reportedly believed that the balloons were from Julia's new boyfriend, which sent him into a rage. After Julia left the house, she locked the door behind her, leaving William, her mother, her son, and her brother at the home. School was unexpectedly closed that day, which is why Julian was at the house on that Friday morning. As Julia pulled away from the curb, William told her, quote, "I saw your mama this morning." He then lingered outside in his car for a while before heading to a service station to buy power steering fluid for his car. At this time, William and Julia had a car loan in both of their names, and William had been failing to pay this loan. Not long after Julia got to work, she received a letter informing her about a wage garnishment related to this car loan, which sparked another argument between them over the phone. At around 9 a.m., a bullet was fired through the front door of the Hudson family home. Inside, Julia's mother, Darnell, was shot in the back while in the living room area. She stumbled further into the house, only to be shot again, this time in the chest. This shot was fatal, and she fell on the living room floor. In a nearby bedroom, Julia's brother Jason was shot twice in the head while seemingly still asleep. By 10 a.m., William was seen at the home of a man named Abdullah Smith, who lived in the same neighborhood. William, who was wearing the hoodie he had on earlier, asked Abdullah, "Can you bust a move with me?" But Abdullah declined, explaining he was busy taking care of his children. A few hours later, Julia returned home, having received a text from William saying he wanted to get down with her that night. Jason's white SUV was parked outside the home at the time she left for work. However, when she came back, it was not there anymore. As she approached the front door, she noticed the bullet hole in the door but found it still locked. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and was horrified to find her mother's lifeless body on the living room floor. Julia immediately ran out, screaming, and asked a young neighbor to go inside and check on her family. The neighbor returned with devastating news. Her son Julian was not inside the home, and both her mother and brother were dead. Julia then called 911. Police arrived shortly after, confirming that both Darnell and Jason were deceased, and that both Julian and Jason's white SUV were missing. When asked by the police if anyone might want to harm her family, Julia immediately named her estranged husband, William, pointing out that he had threatened them in the weeks leading up to the murders. During the initial investigation, Detective Nolan was given information about William, including his phone number, his girlfriend's name, which was Shanta, and her address. Another officer, Detective Sigarski, spoke to a neighbor who reported seeing William stalking Julia around the house and hearing him say he planned to kill everyone there. Deborah Hampton was a crack cocaine user and a regular customer of William's. Deborah recalled a time in August when she went to buy drugs from William and met him behind the Hudson family home, just a block away from her own home. She saw him crouched near a window, watching the inside of the house. When her keys made a noise, William became irritated and admitted he was spying on Julia and her new boyfriend. Additionally, a 13-year-old neighbor of the Hudson family stated that when she first met William at a local park, he confided in her that his wife was cheating on him and that he was going to deal with it. She later overheard William arguing with Julia on the street, and she heard him threaten to kill Julia and her family if she ever called the police. Other neighbors reported hearing gunshots coming from the direction of the Hudson home that morning around 9 a.m., though they didn't think much of it since gunfire was unfortunately common in the Englewood neighborhood. During the first hour of the investigation, William called Julia, who was with police outside her home at the time. He claimed a young woman from the neighborhood had told him about the shootings and claimed that he was up north, but would come over right away. As the investigation into the double homicide continued, police found out that William spent some of that time trying to arrange for someone to move his car to the west side, which was stranded on the south side. He was also working on creating alibis for his whereabouts earlier that day. Given that Julian was still missing, the Chicago Police Department brought in officers from their Special Victims Unit to help with the case. Sergeant James Washburn quickly determined that William's cell phone carrier was Sprint. He contacted them and filed an emergency request for the cell tower data to help track William's whereabouts after an Amber Alert had been issued which had listed William as a suspect. The data they received showed that William's phone was just a few blocks away from his girlfriend Shanta Cathy's home at 1925 South Spaulding. Shanta and William had been in a relationship for several months at that time, and he would often stay at her house 4 to 5 nights a week. At first, Shanta had no idea that William was still married, but eventually she found out that not only was he married, but he also had at least one other girlfriend. The day before the murders, which also happened to be her daughter's birthday, William was at Shanta's house. He left early, saying he'd be back, but never returned. Instead, he claimed he couldn't come back because he needed a jack for his car and was over by 83rd and Ellis. Shanta, concerned, tried to track him down, even going to that block to look for him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. She ended up making a scene by honking her horn repeatedly until the police told her to leave the area. It was later revealed that instead of dealing with his car, he spent the night with another woman, Diana Grant. But even then, he called Julia twice in the middle of the night. On the day of the murders at around 4 p.m., while still at Shanta's home, William placed 2 phone calls to his friend, Quincy Brown, who was at his mother's house. During these calls, William expressed his frustrations, referring to his wife as a fat bitch who was cheating on him, saying that he would kill her if he caught her cheating. He also spoke about Julia's brother Jason, referring to him as that bitch-ass N-word. In the first conversation, William sounded panicked, explaining that he was having problems with his car's steering, and Quincy gave him simple advice about the car. William asked Quincy to meet him immediately at 71st and Vincennes, since he needed help with his car. After the call ended, William called back a minute later and pleaded with Quincy, telling him that he needed to see him immediately. Quincy told him that he couldn't make it for an hour, and he was later put on hold by William for a couple of minutes. When he returned to the call, William told Quincy that his wife was on the line accusing him of being responsible for the deaths of her mother and brother. Quincy was taken aback and asked why she would blame him out of all people, to which William replied, "Because I got into it with that bitch-ass N-word." In the second conversation, William asked Quincy to meet a woman named Brittany on the south side to pick up the keys for his car, and then bring the vehicle to the west side. While on the call, Quincy was watching the news, which was covering the murder investigation and the police's search for William. Quincy assured William that he was on his way and that he would pick him up, but he instead just stayed home. About 30 minutes later, Quincy called William again, telling him he had seen him on the news. At this point, Quincy directly asked William if he murdered Darnell and Jason. William's response was, quote, "It's bigger than me," and then hung up. Later that afternoon, more than a dozen officers gathered outside the home of William's girlfriend, Shanta Cathy, so they could take both her and William into custody for questioning. William tried to flee and briefly resisted arrest. When he was finally detained by Detective Sanchez, he was found with his cell phone, some keys, and a CTA pass. He and Shanta were then taken to Area 1 for questioning. Over the next few hours, William was interviewed several times, and he willingly gave his version of the day's events. He claimed that he went straight from a friend's house, Diana Grant's home, to his wife's house, but left out the part where he sold crack during that time.
Where'd you sleep last night?
I slept on 83rd, 84th, and Ellis. 83rd, 84th, and Ellis, yeah.
What's there?
Cause she,
What's there?
that's another one of my people that stay over there.
People are abroad. Is it somebody you're fucking, or is it, I don't, it's your business. Or is it one of your people?
It's a female, but I wouldn't call her no broad, not like that.
Was she a relative, or
No, she just a friend.
just a friend?
She just a friend.
You know her name and phone number and all that shit?
I know her phone number.
What's her
Her
name?
name, Grant.
Grant?
Grant.
He said that after seeing his wife, his car broke down, and he went to get power steering fluid. He claimed that he then parked his car near Robeson High School, a few blocks from the Hudson home, around 8:30 a.m., and then took the train from the south side to Shanta's apartment on the west side using his CTA pass.
Why's your car over by Roberson High School?
The power steering going on here.
The what?
Power steering. The steering. You can't drive the car.
Okay, when did you park it there?
Oh, shoot. Well, when I got done seeing my wife,
When was that?
it was early this morning. She had to be to work at 8, so the car has been parked there since like 8:30.
After you saw her, you parked it there?
After I seen her, I went to the gas station to get some power steering fluid. If you look at it, it's power steering fluid all around where it go at.
The pump was leaking or something?
The hose, I think it's the hose, it's not the pump.
So, but you had the car at the house?
It was parked in the driveway.
Okay.
She opened up the window, she told me to come in. I came in, synced her, we both left out together. So I got the power steering. I pulled around just so I can get the car from facing in both direction. And I caught the hood and put the power steering in there. But it leaked out so quick, by the time I had got to 69, I couldn't park on the side of the street where the school is. So I had to park it on the other side. And there was some construction workers out there, some Mexicans out there. And after that, I had just walked to the L, because the L, right? Robeson School right here.
I
The
know,
L is
I
like,
know, I know,
right,
Bill.
it's like 5 blocks over.
How'd you, did you pay for the L? Did you use a card or what did you do?
They took my bus card out of my pocket.
That's what
I
you
got a
used?
7-day.
Okay,
I got a 7-day bus card.
okay. And you used that?
Yeah. I
And you
used
went from 69th to where?
Cermak,
Okay.
27. And I got on the Cermak bus and took it over there to Spalding.
Okay. Do you know about what time that was?
I think it was probably like around 10:10 or something like that. I know it was a little bit past 10.
When you got on 69th Street, it was.
Oh, shit. I think that was like around like, what, probably 8:30.
Okay.
8:30. It ain't no exact time, but I'm just telling you that.
Yeah, I know. I don't expect you to look at your watch every 2 seconds.
No.
However, evidence showed that much of his story was false. The CTA record showed that William's pass had not been used on the day of the murders. William claimed to police that he arrived at Shanta's house around 10 a.m. and had been there all day, but this was contradicted by surveillance footage which showed William exiting a car at a gas station near the Hudson family home just before the murders took place, and was therefore at the area at the time of the killings. Additionally, accounts from Shanta and other witnesses contradict these claims. Shanta's neighbor William Graham stated that around noon on the day of the murders, he saw William driving a white SUV, which was actually Jason's, and this was unusual because he had never driven that vehicle before. He also noticed William had parked the SUV in a vacant lot, which was located across from Graham's house, even though there were plenty of spaces down the block in front of his girlfriend's home, where William typically parked. Graham watched as William exited the SUV, holding a bottle of liquor, and walked toward Shanta's home. Additionally, the police were able to track the location of William's phone based on pings between cell towers. On the morning of the murders, William's phone made 2 calls at 3:30 and 3:32 a.m., both using a tower a couple of miles from the Hudson home. Later that morning, there were calls made at 7:28, 8:06, and 8:43 a.m., all of which also using a tower near the Hudson home. There was no activity on the phone between then and 12:56 p.m., when it pinged a tower near 20th and Western. After that, the phone continued to show activity from a tower near Christiana and Ogden, close to Shanta Cathy's apartment at 1925 South Spalding. After William's arrest, detectives were granted court orders to search his phone. They were able to retrieve texts, voicemails, and videos from the device. William called and texted several of his friends on the afternoon of the murders, and he either asked them for help with his broken-down car or help with providing an alibi. He also told them that if the police questioned them, then they should say that he had been out west all day. During the interview with police, William tried to shift blame for the murders, suggesting that Jason had run a drug house, that Jason had enemies, that Jason had been shot before, and even mentioned that the house had been burglarized a few months earlier while William was incarcerated.
I'm gonna tell you something that I don't know nothing about. You understand what I'm saying? Like I told them, and I'm gonna tell y'all the same thing. They tried to protect their sister's name. Now, in all actuality, her brother had a lot of enemies. You know what I'm saying? Because he pushed weight about the crib. That's one of the reasons I left about that house. It was a drug house. What more do you expect? It was a drug house.
What kind of weights he pushing?
You say what?
What's he, cocaine or rock? Or
Yeah, cocaine.
Okay.
You know, he created a lot of enemies over there. You know, he talked about this guy, word got back around. It was a hit. Everybody just branched themselves away from him.
You got bad blood with Jason?
What you mean bad blood?
You don't get along.
No, it ain't no bad blood. He just don't want nobody around, period, after what happened. Because when I was locked up...
What happened? I don't know what happened.
No, that's what I'm finna tell you.
Okay, I'm listening.
When I was locked up, they stole $1,500 out that crib.
You did?
No, I was locked up.
Okay.
When instructed to hand over the clothes he was wearing, William mentioned that he had been wearing them all day, but this claim was also proven to be false, with video evidence showing otherwise. Shanta was taken in for questioning, and initially she provided William with an alibi, saying that he had been at her home by 10 a.m. But as the interview went on, she changed her story, admitting that William had asked her to say that. Shanta stated that on the morning of the murders, she had a 15-minute conversation with William, and he told her he would come by her house later. Around noon, he showed up with a bottle of Hennessy, but then left again, this time carrying a pair of blue Timberland boots. A couple of hours later, while Shanta was out shopping, she ran into him while walking down the sidewalk. He was still wearing the same outfit, white hoodie, black pants, and a pair of Air Jordans, and he said he was just going to check on his car. What he didn't tell her was that his car was still parked on the south side. An hour later, he came back to her house, but this time his clothes had changed. The hoodie and sneakers were gone, replaced by a red Pelly jacket and the boots he had been carrying earlier. He claimed he had a headache, and Shanta noticed he seemed upset, so she followed him to the bedroom. It was there that he told her that if anyone asked, she should say he'd been at her house since 10 a.m. Then, out of nowhere, he said, they got shot. When she asked who, he coldly replied her mother and brother. Shanta stared at him, shocked. She said that he looked crazy and bug-eyed as he went on to explain that he had gone into the Hudson home, and when the brother rushed at him, he shot him. He then said the mother was coming down the stairs calling his name, and he shot her too. When Shanta asked about the little boy, Julian, William claimed that he was outside and assured her that she didn't need to worry about him. She said, "I hope ain't nothing happened to the little boy," and he repeated, "You don't have to worry about that." After that, he just sat on the bed, glued to his phone. This conversation happened long before Shanta heard about the murders through the media or that the police were looking for William. A few hours later, the police arrived and William tried to leave her bedroom, phone in hand, seemingly trying to sneak out the back door. After briefly resisting, both he and Shanta were taken into custody. After being questioned, William was held by the Chicago police for the maximum 48 hours they are allowed to hold a suspect without charging them. After the 48 hours had passed, William was held by the Illinois Department of Corrections for a parole violation. Meanwhile, the search for 7-year-old Julian continued across the city. 3 days later, on October 27th, a woman named Lynette Williams from the West Side noticed a white SUV parked near her home, which was about 10 miles from the Hudson family home. The vehicle matched the descriptions that had been shared in the media about the Hudson murders and the description from the Amber Alert. She recalled seeing the car the morning after the murders. and after hearing media reports over the weekend, she thought it might be connected. She called 911, and when investigators checked the car at around 7 a.m., they discovered the body of young Julian. His hand was sticking out from under a shower curtain which was covering his lifeless body on the floor of the car's back seat. A forensic examination revealed some troubling details. A bullet hole in the floorboard indicated that the bullet had entered Julian's head at an 80-degree angle, then continued through the bottom of the car. The forensic pathologist who conducted Julian's autopsy, Dr. Mikitra Kalikar, revealed that Julian was shot twice in the head while he was laying behind the front seat of the SUV. One of the gunshot wounds was superficial, while the other was much more severe, entering through the back of his head, fracturing his skull, and passing through his brain before exiting through his left cheek. Based on the lack of rigor mortis and the early stage of decomposition, it was determined that Julian had been dead for 3 days when his body was found. This meant that William had kidnapped Julian from the home after he murdered Darnell Donerson and Jason Hudson, but had killed him just a short time later. Investigators also found that the car's driver's seat was less than 2 feet from the brake pedal, and therefore was positioned too close for Jason Hudson, who was significantly larger, to have been driving it. But it was the perfect fit for William, who was smaller and slimmer, standing at 5'7" and weighing only 150 pounds. Jennifer Hudson was in Florida at the time of the shootings, and she had returned to Chicago to identify her mother and brother's bodies. The investigation expanded as more than 90 probationary officers from the police academy assisted in a massive search of the area between the vehicle and the apartment where William had been arrested, a distance of about 2 miles. Half of the officers searched from the SUV's location, while the other half searched from the apartment's location. Just half a block from the vehicle's location, officers found a gun that was identified by several witnesses as Jason Hudson's. Ballistics tests confirmed that the bullets from that gun matched the ones used in the murders. Karen Tucker from the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Center stated that the 4 fired cartridge cases found at the Hudson home and the 3 bullets recovered during the autopsies all came from the same gun, which was Jason's Sig Sauer semi-automatic weapon that William had stolen. Several witnesses testified to seeing William with the stolen gun, linking him directly to the murder weapon. Witnesses testified that they had seen William with the murder weapon in his waistband, and one of his friends even said that William had the gun at a poker party just days before the murders. Shanta Kathy also testified that she had seen William carrying the gun multiple times in her apartment. Robert Burke, a trace analyst from the state police, found gunshot residue on the steering wheel cover of the SUV, suggesting either the gun was fired inside the car or someone who had recently fired a gun had touched the wheel. Unfortunately, William wasn't tested for gunshot residue in a timely manner, as he was arrested too long after the shootings. However, Robert did analyze William's clothing from the day of the murders for any trace particles of gunshot residue. Robert found a unique particle on the right cuff of the red Pelly jacket that William wore when he returned to Shanta's apartment. While it wasn't consistent with being directly fired in proximity to the jacket, it could have been transferred from a secondary or tertiary source. He also examined the jacket William wore when meeting Julia before the murders. While 2 out of the 3 necessary particles for gunshot residue were found on the right cuff, Robert couldn't definitively say it was positive for gunshot residue, though it was possible that it had been transferred. A similar result came from testing the back waistband of William's pants. Robert also examined the roof liners in the SUV, finding gunshot residue on the rear liner, which was consistent with a gun being fired in the area where Julian's body was discovered. Interestingly, several items of clothing that William had been seen wearing that day, including the hoodie and black athletic pants, were never found and therefore were never tested. Illinois State Police analyst Pauline Gordon noted that while William's DNA was not found on the murder weapon, this does not rule out the possibility that he could have handled the gun, since some people shed skin cells faster, and that gloves could have been worn. On December 1, 2008, William Balfour was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Darnell Donerson, Jason Hudson, and Julian King. He was also charged with other crimes. At a court hearing on December 3, William was denied bail, while William's attorney, Joshua Kutnick, maintained that his client was innocent. However, on December 30th, William was indicted, and on January 20th, 2009, he pleaded not guilty to all the charges. In May 2012, a jury convicted William Balfour on 3 counts of first-degree murder.
Balfour found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder. He faces a mandatory sentence of life in prison.
In addition to the murder charges, he was also found guilty of home invasion, aggravated kidnapping, residential burglary, and possession of a stolen motor vehicle. Before his sentencing, William was given the opportunity to make a statement in court. In his statement, he expressed condolences to the Hudson family but continued to maintain his innocence. He said, quote, "My deepest prayers go out to Julian King. I loved him. I still love him. I'm innocent, Your Honor." Gregory King, Julian's father, addressed the court before William's sentence was announced. He said, quote, "Instantly, it was like a chunk of my heart was ripped out. I felt hopeless. I was filled with rage for William Balfour, the man who murdered my son." Gregory responded to William's statement, where he claimed to love Julian, saying, quote, "To tell us in open court that you loved that child is an insult to all of us." Before sentencing William for his crimes, Cook County Judge Charles Patrick Burns told him, quote, "You have the heart of an Arctic night. Your soul is as barren as dark space." Judge Burns was certain that Julian was killed because he could have identified William as the murderer, and because he was in the way. Judge Burns told William that Julian, quote, "shared his life with you. For sure he looked up to you. There is no doubt in my mind he looked up to you as you were putting bullets into his head. I just hope his terror was short-lived." William Balfour was then sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole for the murders, plus an additional 120 years. In the wake of these tragic deaths, the Hudson family founded the Hudson King Foundation for Families of Slain Victims, aimed at helping families who have lost relatives to violent crimes. They also founded the Julian D. King Gift Foundation in honor of Julian, aimed at helping children living in poverty by providing them school supplies and Christmas gifts. Years after his conviction, William was interviewed by Chuck Gowdy in 2016. This was his first publicized interview since his conviction. In the interview, he claimed that his conviction was part of a larger conspiracy involving law enforcement, witnesses, and lawyers, and that he had nothing to do with the murders. When questioned about the murder of Julian King, William said, quote, "It could have been a wrong place at the wrong time. The person who come in there to kill somebody don't kill who they kill. If you are a witness and you can identify somebody, they can say I killed him because he could have identified me, but that's not the case." When Chuck Gowdy told him that Julian could have identified him, he replied saying, quote, "That what I said earlier, that he could identify me, and that's why he got killed. Or he killed him because he could identify him." Now Julian was smart. He could remember faces. After the murders of her mother, brother, and nephew, Jennifer Hudson faced unimaginable pain. However, she stated that she made the difficult decision to forgive William Balfour. She explained that, in her eyes, William is not mentally sound, and his actions weren't entirely his fault because of the circumstances of his upbringing. When she appeared on Oprah's Next Chapter, Jennifer said, quote, "We tried to offer him love, but he was so distant from everyone that he didn't even notice." Jennifer went on to share how a lot of painful truths came out about his childhood during the trial, revealing a lack of love and support that shaped him into who he became. She said, quote, "Had you had the love my mother gave us, or the background that some have, then you would have stood a chance." Her faith played a huge role in helping her navigate the tragedy. In another interview, Jennifer talked about how her Christian upbringing gave her the strength to keep going. She reflected on her mother's words, saying, quote, "There would be no point in faith if it wasn't tested. My mother always told me, no matter how negative your life seems to be, you must always look for a positive." The pain Julia suffered from losing 3 family members, including her son Julian, was unbearable. She admitted she went through countless what-if scenarios in her mind, blaming herself for what happened. She said, quote, "How can I not go through the what-ifs? Because I married him. If I hadn't seen what I thought I saw in him. And once I did begin to see who he really was, I tried to get out. That was his promise. If you leave me, I'll kill you. I'll kill your family first. I left, and he did what he said he would." Some people think that William Balfour is innocent, and some even are going as far as saying that Jennifer Hudson sacrificed her family for fame, and that Julia's 911 call sounded fake.
Come on, house! Please!
Gun, the gun.
Please, please kill my mama! Oh my God!
I don't understand what you're saying. You gotta stop screaming.
Somebody kill my mama! Somebody kill my mama, please!
Somebody did what?
Somebody kill my mama!
Somebody killed your mother.
Yes, please help me!
Does she need an ambulance?
I don't know, I'm scared, please! Somebody, please for the ambulance, yes!
Where are you? What's going on?
I don't know, like she been shot. Can you please send an ambulance, please?
What happened?
I don't know. She's on the floor. I see blood coming from her head.
Is she breathing?
I don't know. I didn't even touch her. I just ran up the house.
Do you know what happened? Did she fall?
No, I just got home from work. And there's a bullet. There's a bullet hole in our front door.
Is a bullet hole in your front door?
Yeah, Mom, please
right.
help my mama.
All right, are you guys in the house?
Yes, please send the ambulance.
All right.
My mama. Sorry, my mama.
The ambulance is on the way. And the police.
Yes. Okay.
One person said that it's, quote, so crazy how she blew up and got so many more big opportunities after this. First black woman after this that got an EGOT, and now she got a talk show. Seems odd to me. Other people disagree and say that this was actually a hit on Jason because the Hudson family home was a trap house and William was just the fall guy. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.